Well, this week, Denver, Colorado became the first U.S. city to decriminalize magic mushrooms. The psychedelic drug, also known as psilocybin, has experienced a resurgence in terms of therapeutic use in recent years. There is some medical research out there that has found the substance to have positive effects in alleviating symptoms of both depression and PTSD. It has also proved promising as a treatment during end-of-life care. Now, as a result, there is a growing movement of people right here in Canada pushing to expand psilocybin research. Among them is Mark Haden. Now, he's the executive director of the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies Canada, and we reached him right now in Main Island in BC. So, Mark, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, you're welcome, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here.
Listen, I want to begin with timing because I find this very interesting. Why now? Why is there now a movement to decriminalize psilocybin or magic mushrooms?
Well, it's part of a large drug policy reform movement. And as you know, cannabis has been legalized in Canada, partly in a response to the fact that many states are now legalizing cannabis. And so there's a general feeling that drug prohibition creates more harms than it does good. And so there's a belief generally in the population that we need to move away from criminalized activities towards maximizing the benefits and minimizing the harms of many different substances, including psychedelics.
Well, harm is why we have laws, not only in this country, but in other countries. And I say that because in the United States, they do consider mushrooms as a drug with a high abuse potential, as well as no accepted medical value. So is it really worth decriminalizing if that's what at least our neighbors to the south is concluding about magic mushrooms?
Well, there is a psychedelic renaissance afoot. There is a huge amount of research looking at psychedelic medicines. And so far, what the research is showing is they are proving to be significant in their potential to treat a variety of issues, including some issues that are currently untreatable. You mentioned depression. Depression is often treated with long, ongoing medicines that don't work very well. And it appears that psychedelic medications can actually treat depression in a way that is very different, in that it can, quite frankly, cure it in relatively short treatments. So depression, end-of-life anxiety, some addiction issues are all the ones that are showing current promise for specifically for psilocybin treatments.
So how does it work then? How is it different than, say, current treatments for things like depression?
Well, current treatments for depression don't work very well. You take medications for long periods of time, and you don't essentially reset your brain. And we're looking at psychedelic treatments, and we're not talking about things that you can do at home. It's psychedelic therapy, psychedelic-assisted therapies, relatively high dosage, seem to be able to reset the brain to essentially produce a non-depressed state in people. And we're offering like 1, 2, or maybe 3 different treatments, but it isn't an ongoing process. Current things like the SSRIs, the normal antidepressants, you have to take for years. Psychedelic treatments are incredibly brief and seem to be very effective at treating these kind of issues that are historically relatively untreatable.
So it would permanently reset the brain?
Well, that's a good question. So what we're looking at is maybe having to redo the treatment once every year or 2 is currently where we're thinking about it now. But it doesn't require ongoing treatment in the same way the current antidepressants do. Now it's also curious because there are as you know, the Denver initiative decriminalized or essentially decriminalized mushrooms, but there's another initiative coming up, which is the Oregon Psilocybin Service Initiative, which is going to ask the population of Oregon at the next federal election whether they should legalize psilocybin services. And if it passes, then facilities will be licensed to provide adults with psilocybin experiences by trained professionals. And it could be for either treatment of depression, anxiety, or addiction issues, or for people who would like to have psycho-spiritual explorations. So it really takes this whole question and makes it much larger. And so that's an exciting initiative to watch.
Very quickly, Mark, because we're running out of time here, but I have to ask, because it's interesting that you're noting both Denver in Colorado as well as Oregon, because those are the states that were on the forefront of decriminalizing and then legalizing marijuana in the United States. You say that there is a movement in Canada to have a similar decriminalization when it comes to magic mushrooms in this country. I'm wondering what the response has been from health officials, from government officials to this idea.
Well, so far, in the quiet discussions that the psychedelic researchers have had with government officials, is they're open to looking at the research and they're open to the evidence. Certainly, I'm involved with an MDMA-assisted psychotherapy for post-traumatic stress disorder. And even under Harper, we were able to move forward. And certainly under Justin Trudeau, we're continuing to work with getting our levels of approval that are required. We've moved through our stage 2 clinical trial, and now we've got it getting approvals to move into our phase 3 clinical trial.
And MDMA is ecstasy, is how it might be known as a street drug, right?
Yes, and after we finish our stage 3 clinical trial, we'll be opening clinics across Canada offering this service.